left her wine in the front row. Could have been
I timed it
catastrophe.
perfectly.
I know, it was
Just
great.
as the music finished.
Okay, we all made it. We're all hydrated.
Getting less and less hydrated all the time.
Yes, perfect. So, hello everyone. Happy Brain Awareness Week. Welcome to this live episode of Fax Machine. And my name is Rob Frawley. I'm here with my co-host Noah.
Hello.
And our special guests, Paula Croxson
Hello.
and Thiago Arzua.
Hello.
Excellent. So, in terms of quick introductions, Paula is the director of Dana Frontiers at the Dana Foundation, a published neuroscientist and a science communication expert, having produced Story Collider, spoken at Society for Neuroscience, and recently led public programs at the Zuckerman Institute. Paula, do you ever get tired of talking about brains?
Never.
Not even once?
No. No, I mean, I totally burned out once and quit academia and then came back into academia in a different kind of way. So, yeah, I got really tired of it at one point. But,
Okay.
but I'm back now.
Yeah, all right. Nice. And then,
Years involved, right? Like,
and then also with us tonight, Thiago is a postdoctoral researcher in the Marlin Lab at Columbia University, where they study the effects of transgenerational trauma. He hails from Brazil and has studied in Florida and Wisconsin and has a better understanding of the whole United States than most New Yorkers in the room tonight. Thiago, can you compare the places that you've lived?
everywhere outside New York City is about Florida suburbia. Like, it's all the same. They're all exactly the same.
Kind of one note.
Big trucks and weird people.
Apologies to everyone who's not in New York City.
I'm from Texas. It's a fair hit.
Does the neuroscience change place to place?
Certainly the brains do.
We're off to a rocky start. I like it. So, briefly, very briefly, I want to point out to our aquatic listeners, because there may be some. Any aquatic fans in the house? Very
What does
nice.
that mean?
Where
Yeah,
are
does
the
that mean,
swimmers
like,
at?
are there fish in the house?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't want to be too exclusive. So if you like water or being in it or drinking it, perhaps, let's hear it. Yeah, water. Yeah.
Rob,
But-
is this because you were a swimmer?
It's called a swammer.
Okay.
No, I am a swammer.
Okay.
But I believe Paula and Thiago, you have both done an open water race. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. Which means,
fortunately, yeah.
Noah, you're the only person on stage who hasn't swam across a large distance of water in a competitive race.
That's
Yet.
true. But
Yet.
that's a great way of looking at it. But I hopefully never will. And also, I am proud to say that I have the exact right body composition to not have to tread water. So I will probably be fine if I can find the right current.
Excellent. That's the kind of mentality you need if you fall off a ship.
Don't put it past me.
It's also St. Patrick's Day.
Woo!
Yes. And so you may have escaped it by coming down here, but I wore a kilt anyway, so you wouldn't forget. First time. It's my first time. It is very liberating. It's great.
It will definitely stop people from leaving halfway through the show.
Yes.
Remember what you're going back to.
I thought you meant Rob's kill would prevent people from leaving.
It's both repulsive and attractive factors.
As long as we can get a stiff breeze up in here.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. Welcome to Caveat on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And I think with no further ado, I should tell you what you're in store for today. The four of us will be taking turns going through some interesting neurological, if not illogical facts, play around with the ideas that we're going to be presented, and see if we can't wrap things up with a little pub-style trivia quiz, which you have all begun to embark in. So we will subject our hosts to the same that you have had to endure. I would say the show has a lot of action potential. That was a quiz.
Very good.
Nice. Okay, so
That was a neuroscience joke.
and
Please don't get into a fight.
It won't be the last one. So while we overstimulate your hippocampi with new declarative memories, you can actively work to combat that and undo all the memory consolidation by going right over there to the bar. Help yourself to some drinks. Your nucleus accumbens will thank you later. I study bones. Was that right?
It's pretty good.
All right. So with no further ado, for real, I'm going to hand it off to Thiago, who's going to give us our first fact.
Woo!
I was told to talk about facts, so I prepared my dissertation. The next 2 or 3 hours, we'll go over all of them. I'm kidding. It is St. Patrick's Day, so of all the things that are in there, the most important one is alcohol. It was a big part of my dissertation, but this really is just like all the weird rabbit holes that I fell through while studying this. And it starts, like everything fucking does, with Aristotle. Sometime while I was studying this or writing about it, I fell into the rabbit hole that he wrote this at some point. Kind of judgmental. I don't know. I never liked him.
I would say. Can you, just for the podcast, can you say the quote?
Oh, I'm sorry. So he said that
We just want you saying it.
Foolish, drunk, and harebrained women most often bring forth into themselves children that are morose and languid, which scientifically is interesting. It's one of the first times we have some data showing that people realize that drinking while pregnant is not great for the kid. But judgmental, and it got me thinking, when did we realize that, alcohol is kind of cool? It's basically since civilization has been around. These are only a few examples. They're kind of spread throughout Eurasia. So up there, it's modern-day Syria and 11,000 years before the Common Era. Down there is the actual oldest, so Rakat Cave in modern-day Israel. All of these places have traces of fermented something. So in the case of China, it's fermented rice. In all the other cases, it's fermented wheat or barley. Since humans are humans, we've been kind of getting fucked up. But it kind of gets better because it's before humans were humans that we started this. So when we last shared an ancestor with chimps and gorillas about 8 to 12 million years ago, we looked like this. There you go.
Oh, wow.
So that's our great-grandfather. Probably getting drunk because that was the first time that we were finally able to process ethanol itself. This is when we finally went from getting to beer to acetaldehyde, which is the poison one. If you remember anything from this talk, it's that acetaldehyde is just as bad, if not worse, than ethanol. And eventually that gets turned into acetic acid, aka vinegar. So that was when we started being able to process these things.
So you have this diagram up here where, like, 8.5 to 12 million years ago, that's when we got the ability to, break down acetaldehyde? Is that what it is?
Break down ethanol.
Ethanol,
There's
okay.
a lot of different alcohols. Ethanol is the one that, beer.
Right. But then, so my question is basically, can orangutans not drink? Because they definitely seem like the ape that would be the most likely to be, like, kicking
Maybe
back.
they're always drunk because they
Maybe.
can't break it down.
That's
so,
right.
It's just around.
They can't hold it.
I think it's the first time, like, in human evolution, like, other animals, like moose, get fucked up, but they're not. They're not in the same branch.
Of course, we all know that about meese.
Canadian people, please, yeah. Other animals do get drunk, but on our little branch, that was the first time that we were able to break down ethanol. And it leads to the beautiful hypothesis, one of my favorite ones in science, which is the drunken monkey hypothesis, which apparently, if this is true, when we came down from the trees, there was, another climate change. The fruits that were on the ground that were more available were rotten or, like, about to get rot. They have more sugar, they get fermented, they get a little bit of alcohol, and to this day, drunken monkeys are still around.
I love this picture. I feel like the adult, I think it's gorilla, and then the child gorilla.
Sharing is caring.
But it kind of makes me think of, I don't know what made me go here. I think it was the ADHD, but it made me think of Hebb's postulate, that it's like, if, fire together, wire together, right? So it's, if you get pissed together, we continue to exist together.
That's how civilization started.
That was good.
You should clap for that.
Don't
Clap
turn
for
on.
that.
No, okay, well, now, this is condescending.
I just thought.
That was a pity clap.
I remember my first rotten fruit.
What is beautiful is that there's still a lot of drunk monkeys around. So this is in St. Nick, an island in the middle of the Caribbean. But the BBC went there to do a documentary on these monkeys that it started with, like, stealing people's drinks, stealing people's cocktails, and now it's a whole island full of drunk monkeys all the time. See, sharing is caring. You help your buddy, and then you take a shot. And the best part is that they'll just, like, be drunk, foolish monkeys all over. Like, they're just sloppy.
This is actually live from outside in the Lower East Side right now.
So if anything, That was me yesterday.
I'm gonna cut that laugh to right after what I said before.
So if anything, your goal should be to be as drunk as these monkeys tonight. Wow.
I watched this documentary once, and one of the things they said is that the drunkest monkeys are like the most respected in the monkey community, and like rise into leadership.
Well, just like a fraternity, yeah.
Yeah. There's serious flashback potential here.
But this is Brain Awareness Week, so we do have to talk about the brain eventually. And the fun and kind of very upsetting thing about alcohol and the brain is that we still don't know. It's been millions of years, but we still don't fully know because it goes everywhere. As you've seen before, it's a small little molecule. It binds to everything. It goes everywhere. So it goes to your hypothalamus, which would explain why most of you would need to pee 16 times today. It goes to your amygdala, which explains your emotions, your fear processing, all the other things. It explains why some dudes need to fight every time they get drunk. Impairs your visual cortex. That's how you get your blur vision. That's how you get, that's not who I thought it was. It affects your cerebellum eventually. This is all your fine scale motor coordinations. If a cop stops you, just try to touch your nose as best as you can. Affects prefrontal cortex. That's where we make like all your like smart decisions. That's when you hear the voice of tequila telling you to go dance. It affects your sensory motor cortex, which will explain why falling off the stage dancing didn't hurt that one time. It does affect, like we talked before, it does affect your memory. It will make you forget that you danced on a stage and fell. But this is a serious podcast, and alcohol will kill you. If you drink enough, it'll go to your brainstem. It affects your respiration rate, all your aliveness. So moderation is the key here. What's kind of fascinating, not just in time, but in amount of scale that we drink, this is from 2018, and it's worldwide alcohol consumption. The measure is kind of weird. It's like amount of pure alcohol. Like we're doing shots of like straight ethanol in the lab. Wouldn't recommend. But it averages out to about a bottle of wine every week for every 7 billion of us. So you might fall below or above that average. But there is an average, and I thought it was kind of high. I always thought it was more interesting that Europe is very drunk. Like it's the stereotype. No offense.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
England is surprisingly low, though. Not my
story
personal
time?
experience.
And I know we all understand geography a lot because it's the US, and you definitely know that this is the Czech Republic. But I really want to talk about Poland first. Thank you for the other one person that's online as much as I am.
Just mentioning Poland was the biggest laugh line I think.
They are not the drunkest country, but they do own the problematic record of the top 3 drunkest human beings whom I ever lived. Wow. Sorry for the spoiler, but they all died. On number 3, good God, I'm not gonna try to pronounce that city. They found a man lying on the floor, naked, in the middle of a Polish winter, still breathing, still alive, with a BAC blood alcohol content. We'll get to exactly what that means later, of 1.37. Number 2 was in 1995. A man somehow was driving, and nothing good comes out of that.
Well, they say you get better at driving when you're drunk.
There's a limit.
They say. I don't.
You didn't attend those college things, and like when they tell you not to.
I've never had a car because of all the points on my license.
So no trucks in Texas?
No, horses, obviously.
No one didn't tell you this. He's Polish.
Yeah.
Amazing clap. And the number 1, which is unfortunately likely fake, it was a BAC of 2.23. It's kind of weird. They just, after the person died, they just took blood from the wound and tried to test it. So probably not real, which makes me tell the story about Tadeusz. I really don't know how to pronounce this man's name. But he also crashed his car, as I mentioned. Don't feel super sorry about him, but he did drink a lot. And at some point, I tried to this was actively during my dissertation writing. I tried to figure out what would bring your BAC to 1.48, this is a nicely CDC level chart of BAC, so you might be right around a 0.2 or 0.4 right now. Like just no clinical things are happening. Like mostly okay.
I love a subclinical time.
It's like no one whining, just not
time.
clinically drunk.
That's probably the best review this podcast has ever gotten. The New York Times calls it subclinical. Not quite euphoric. Don't get excited.
No, never get excited.
I think if the makers of the show Euphoria knew how far left they were on this chart, they would have been really disappointed.
They would have called it
Have you seen that new high school drama, Coma?
That show's about
I've
Coke,
lived
not
it.
alcohol, though. At 0.08, as you might know, it's when you're not allowed to drive anymore. And as you keep, downing those shots, you get to euphoria, you get to confusion, you get to stupor and coma. If you remember the number that I just mentioned of Tadeusz, it was 3 times over what, death should have happened. And if you're wondering what's the percentage, what does that mean? I have a beer in front of me, where am I? The CDC defines a standard drink as any one of these 4, like a can of, we don't know a brand of seltzer. A glass of...
That's a can brand can.
It's just seltzer.
Yeah.
Black cherry. A glass of wine or a shot of whiskey, or I guess you can take it on the rocks if you're fancy. My actual research focused on the red. This is also a slide directly from my dissertation. A very, okay level of like 3 to 6 drinks over the period of 6 hours. Don't drive after 6 beers, but it's not lethal. Somehow, what the Dills did was, and this is me actively avoiding writing my dissertation, calculating these things because science. Looked up the average weight of a Polish man, around 200 pounds. That would mean that every drink that he drinks will increase his BAC about 0.02, and every hour will decrease by 0.01. Let's assume it was a rough day for Tadeusz, and he was drinking for 12 hours. We've all been there. Right?
Sure.
That would mean 55 pints of beer.
Whoa.
Or if you want wine, 15 bottles of wine, or my very much favorite, 2 handles of vodka.
Oh.
And this slide is directly from your thesis defense after party.
Yes. Unbranded wine. If you want to catch up, we have about an hour and a half, so you have to speed this up. This was for a 2-hour show, but thank God they don't sell vodka in this place. But you need to take a shot of vodka every 2 minutes. Don't do that, you will die. No one should ever do a shot of vodka for every 2 minutes.
Maybe for 4 minutes.
Maybe for 2 minutes.
Still, it's vodka.
Fair point.
After high school,
There's a story there.
the reality is that he only survived, or he actually died afterwards, but he only was able to get to a BAC of
We all
1.4.
die. It's
For the record, he died of the car crash, not of the
yeah.
2 handles of vodka, which
Right.
relates to the car crash, but
Yeah.
not directly.
Actually, I think legally we should probably clarify it does directly. I was joking before.
You didn't really mean it's good to drink and drive?
No,
Oh.
and I think if you'll certainly find in the edit that I didn't say that.
Department of Homeland, please don't take my visa away. The only reason he was able to get to that level was because he built up tolerance. You can simplify things as 2 types of tolerance. The one a lot of you will experience tonight where pint number 2 doesn't hit as hard as pint number 1. That is fairly normal. That's just how our bodies work, and this isn't just for ethanol. This is for any kind of drug. The other one is a chronic tolerance. If you're drinking all the time, it's okay. You'll finish your PhD. I believe in you. But you build what's called a chronic tolerance, which means that to crash the threshold, it takes a lot more drinks. What happens is you're just processing all this alcohol way too fast. Your body's like, why? And just trying to get rid of it as quick as possible. And what's happening in your body, or what was happening in Tadeusz's body before he died, was he was processing the ethanol to acetaldehyde way too fast. And as I mentioned before, it's kind of the acetaldehyde that comes to get you. conventionally, we thought of this as you drink a beer, it goes everywhere, but it also gets processed by your liver. Your liver will produce this aldehyde, go to your brain and cause a lot of the symptoms of hangovers. It will also actually cause a lot of the toxicity that we see. But, and sorry to bring back my dissertation, it was not traumatic at all. What's fun, and the last paper that I cited on my dissertation was this new study from 2021 where they found that this might be happening in the brain, and better yet, might be happening, the aldehyde might be the one causing the trouble. What they did was, this is in mice, it might not be real in humans. They took their mice to the local pub. There's no mice at Caveat.
Yeah. No, we keep them all in the kitchen.
Your show's getting canceled, you understand that, right?
Trying to avoid the daggers being shot my way.
Everyone? They did take a lot of mice and injected them with alcohol. It's the worst way to drink alcohol, but you do you. It's like your
Don't
kink.
inject alcohol, kids.
Lose the mouthfeel.
Don't kink shame.
The mouse feel.
Oh, you like that one?
My fans are in the front row.
Yeah.
My fan, I won.
There she is.
So you still love talking about the brain? So what they did is, in these mice, a group of mice was not processing anything in their liver, only in their brain. The other group was processing only in the brain, not in the liver at all. And then they did what's called rotarod. I swear scientists are like very serious people, but it looks like this. It's a treadmill for mice in a circular form. So each one of these mice is fighting for their life, trying to stand on the treadmill as it's speeding up. So they're kind of just trying to walk, and it keeps speeding up, and they're like shit. And the ones that don't have a lot of coordination, the ones that are like drunk, will fall.
So they're like on the game show Wipeout, but drunk.
Yeah, basically.
It's amazing.
Scientists are very serious all the time. Definitely, you don't watch them and go like, "Fuck you."
Speaking of rotarod and scientists being very serious, this is something that we do in the lab where I work, and there's a thing in our lab where when we have mice in the rotarod, we try to see if we can sing "Rollin', rollin', rollin' on the rotarod" before they fall off.
So they have to make it into the.
Does that help them to stay on?
I think probably.
Do you control for every mouse, like tune, like pitch perfect? And all?
I am always on key, so but I will say that we frequently get to the do 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 do, and then we're just
They all
have
fall
to keep
down.
going that.
I just listen to Dead Mouse all the time. It's much better. What they found was that the mice who were only processing this in their cerebellum, so in the little blue area, they were still getting like worse scores. They were still getting drunk, despite anything happening on the liver. And much more interesting than this, it wasn't the ethanol. Once they like tried to track what molecule was causing what the behavior, it was the acetaldehyde. So the acetaldehyde was going around the cerebellum, fucking shit up as scientifically as possible. And they would just still be drunk without any ethanol. So, again, this doesn't really necessarily translate to humans yet, but it breaks our logic of like everything's happening in the liver, everything's happening outside the body, and then the brain does something else. For the neuroscience nerds, another very fun thing about this is that it happened in astrocytes. Like neurons can whatever, but astrocytes were doing like all the hard work here. I guess they're getting drunk, so not all the hard work. And it was one of the ways that I realized that people are still studying this very seriously. They're still like trying to understand what alcohol does in the brain. Hasn't always been like that. There's this beautiful study from the 70s. Love the 70s. They study short-term memory loss, which is called, nowadays a blackout. They were very serious. They published in Nature. If you like into science or like academia, you know how serious all these papers are. And they had a purpose. The purpose was to produce, not study, produce amnesia with alcohol while monitoring memory and intellectual functioning. It's the 70s.
I mean, we've all been there.
It's the 70s. Ethics wasn't invented yet, so they just did this in humans from the 70s. So I think that's how they looked. I wouldn't know.
That's all the people looking into a mirror for the study and being really confused by what they see.
I literally just Google men from the 70s.
That sounds like a great name for a band.
It's what they
And
call
the
it.
composition of all the bands our parents listen to.
This is down in St. Louis, so these 10 men from the 70s were subjected to 16 to 18 ounces of 86 proof bourbon in 4 hours.
Wow.
If you don't know what that means they drank 2/3 of a whiskey bottle in 4 hours for science. The best part is yet to come. So while they were drinking this, and a day afterwards, the scientists were testing very seriously what do they remember? Do they forget certain things? Do they forget like something like more, exciting than other things? So they were showing 2 types of stimulus: children's toys and porn.
It was the 70s.
Yeah.
All right?
It was on the same shelf at the bookstore back then. It was just.
They hadn't invented ethics.
Nature paper.
Yeah.
Nature. And the dude's still around doing science. But for some reason, this was allowed. And while they were testing them, they were basically like showing a toy, showing a video of, porn, and asking 1 minute, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 4 hours, and 24 hours later if they remember either the scene or the toy. And they found amazingly that if you didn't remember after 30 minutes, so if you don't remember, how you got here, chances are you're gonna black out. They would still forget 24 hours later. And even more amazing, they would forget both the toys and the porn, so there was no difference there, like just blacking out forever. Science got slightly better since then. We figured some things out about this. We still don't know fully how blackouts happen because we still don't know what memory is. But if you remember,
True.
She studied memory.
Oh, I forgot.
That was okay.
We're not getting heckled from on stage.
If you remember seeing, our great-grandfather here, that was just a quick sensory memory that didn't go anywhere. It was just the feeling of ugh. And that's maybe how you feel drinking a pina colada. It's a summer day, it's lovely outside, and you have that immediate memory of that. Eventually that will get turned into short memory. That's how you I'll get another one. What's the problem here? You remember how you got to the boat and the pina colada? The beer is just the next step. The problem really is when we try to turn this into long-term memory, and the next morning you wake up with, why do I have heart sunglasses? Why did I take this picture? So right now what we know about blackouts is that between short-term memory and long-term memory, both ways, your brain just kind of goes I'm too drunk for this, I can't. So we need the short-term memory to realize the important things I shouldn't drive or I'm drunk. Then we need the long-term memory to remember where we are and why is it Brooklyn again. But I'll go back to this and for one last time shed on acetaldehyde because, as I mentioned, this is the molecule that causes a lot of the hangover effects, and you're already desperately asking how do you cure hangovers. We've been kind of working on it more than we did alcohol. You probably have home remedies. The spoiler alert, just drink water, not drink too much. But scientists actually did try some supplements, and this is fairly recent. They tried one of these 3, but likely will try out the other ones. These are all the enzymes and the cofactors that are responsible for getting rid of a lot of the alcohol and all the other metabolites in there. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. Caused a lot of stomach issues. Paula has personal stories about it.
It worked for me.
Not statistically significant.
The New York Times calls fax machines not statistically significant.
What they saw was that there was some improvement, but to be fair, they were testing people who had a hangover on 3 out of 10. Most postdocs work on 4 or 5 out of 10. So it's not a really hangover. It was just my head hurts a bit. So we don't know. They're still trying to find a cure for it. They're still, the clinical trial itself writes this as this is a public emergency. They're still working on it, but until then, we'll go back to the lovely chart by the CDC and just try to stay in the blue area. This is where it's safe. This is euphoric. This is subclinical. Don't be like Tadeusz. Don't try to get a BAC of 1%. 1% blood, like 1% alcohol in your blood, just doesn't sound right. But if you do, bring a lab notebook, take notes, be a good scientist. Thank you.
All right, give it up. So we're going to go right into our next fact presented to us by Dr. Paula Croxson.
Oh, that's me! I did not know I was next. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to change the subject completely and talk about whether we're intelligent or not. And I don't mean at different levels of alcohol, I just mean in general. And so I've been doing like a lot of work over the years on like the evolution of the brain and whether or not humans are special in some way, whether we are like better than other animals. And
real hometown crowd.
So.
Take that, orangutans.
Humans.
All right, we got a few team human. All right. Just because we can process alcohol and orangutans can't, whatever. But I want to talk about an animal that has a completely different type of brain than mammals. And so I'm going to talk today about my favorite kind of animals. I don't know if any of you have seen this delightful thread on Twitter. Probably not, because you're not so nerdy as me. One person has. Okay, so just for the listeners, this tweet says, I put out peanuts for the birds every morning, and they've started bringing me elastic bands. I don't speak bird. What could this mean? And do I now have to eat the elastic bands?
So that's where all my hair ties are going.
And yes. So somebody responded and said they're making a trade. Keep trading with them, and they'll keep bringing stuff. And if they bring something you really like, give them better food, and then they'll keep bringing that stuff. And below, in the purple here, is someone who had a bird bring him a $20 bill.
Whoa.
And so bought some like better bread, and now has amassed about $200 at this point, and was asking, is this an ethical issue or no? Because I'm not taking the money, you know. So clearly birds understand money and trade.
I would kill to see this heist movie. I'm assuming these are crisp notes fresh from the bank.
That's right, crisp notes and hair ties. That's the collateral here. And so all of us tweeting got me. Get it? Oh, I thought that was good. All of this tweeting got me thinking about corvids. And corvids are a pretty special type of bird. So they include things like magpies, jays, crows, and ravens, of course. Nutcrackers are up there. So they're like a whole family of birds that seem to maybe have a few special powers. And so I'm going to talk about just a few things that until quite recently were thought of as being uniquely human, and that you think there may be like so there are some studies in other animals, like especially monkeys and apes, that showing that they might be able to do this. And I'm going to talk about a few studies in birds where they also found some evidence of some of these things. And the first one is mental time travel. What do I mean by mental time travel? Well, if I asked you to tell me what you have for breakfast this morning, and you were able to tell me about that, you would be able to give me probably quite a weird amount of detail about it, given that you probably didn't sit down at breakfast and go, I must remember this in case someone asks me.
Raisin bran.
It depends on if you drink the night before or not.
A little bit. Nice callback, very good. So
Heckling wasn't happening.
So you might be able to tell me what you had, where you were, who you were with, how you were feeling, were you hungover, did you like it or not? And all of that detail is because you can travel back in time and almost like picture yourself there. You can really like picture yourself, and it's called episodic memory, this kind of memory that allows you to kind of go back in time and retrieve more and more details from just one prompt. So that's a pretty cool kind of memory. And for a long time, it was thought, because one guy said it was the case and wrote a book about it, that no other animal species could do this. I know, I'm not going to name him here. But he's
He must not be named.
But he's wrong. All right, so one of the ways in which he's wrong is that there are some ways in which birds can do this. So this is a western scrub jay, and he has been presented in the lab with a little ice cube tray full of wood shavings. And what these birds are able to do is they have a natural behavior where they bury or cache food. So if they have delicious treats, they might eat some, but they might also stash some for later. And in the lab, they'll do it in these ice cube trays. And what they wanted to know is, do these animals remember where they buried things? And do they remember when they did it? And so what they did, and I apologize for the quality of these images, but the plasticine birds were just so cute. So they gave them two types of treats. They gave them peanuts and they gave them worms. And these birds really love the worms. The worms are totally their favorite. And so if they gave them both to cache, they would cache both kinds of treats. And if a few hours passed and they let them go back in the room, they would go back to the places where they cached the worms, because that was their favorite. But if they let way more time elapse, more like 124 hours and 4 hours, then the birds would go straight for the peanuts, which indicated that they knew how much time had passed. So they're able to track time. In addition, these animals also have social understanding. So if they were observed while they were caching, versus if they were not, the observer's like...
For the listener, the most threatening clay pigeon I've ever seen.
Some people just like to watch the world bird.
If they're observed, in this case, it was like a real scrub jay that was watching them, not a clay, starey scrub jay.
How do they control for the observer not just eating the food?
Well, so what they did in between all of these is they took the food away and they went to see if they went back to the same locations, and then they like rewarded them separately because they didn't want them to use any other sense like smell to find out where the food had been cached. And so depending on whether they'd been observed or not, when they let them go back in the room after 3 hours, they were unobserved. If they had been observed earlier, they moved the food. And if they hadn't been observed earlier, they left it where it was. So that tells you potentially that these birds also have social understanding. They know that another bird is other and that the other bird understands where things are. And I don't know if you know of like these tests that you can do with little kids that are perfectly legal to do on little kids.
These were done in the 70s, right?
Not those tests.
Okay.
To test object permanence, right? So you can ask the kid, like, you like hide something and they don't know whether it's still there or no. So these birds obviously have object permanence. And then you can also ask kids to look at like a view of something and ask the kids, like, what do you think I see? And the kids can only do it at around age 4 or 5. They can only put themselves in your perspective and see what you know. So maybe these birds have at least the intelligence of a 5-year-old, which is kind of me after a few drinks. So great. What I really want to talk about is tool use, because some of my favorite corvids are involved in this. So I'm going to show you a video of Betty the crow. And Betty lived in Oxford. This was a while ago now, so I also apologize for the quality of this. There's food in the bottom of this tube in a little basket, and Betty has a straight piece of wire. And she is already, I think this is like the 7th time she's ever encountered this, and she's already like trying to figure out how to use this piece of wire. But it's not really working because it's just a straight piece of wire. So what she's going to do now is she's going to go and bend the shit out of this piece of wire. And then she's going to go right in there and she's going to she's just going to hook it.
Hey for Betty.
That's wild.
A 5-year-old could never.
Never. So Betty's a New Caledonian crow. She lived in Oxford with another crow named Abel. And Betty and Abel took part in a lot of these experiments, along with a lot of their other cohort crows. Betty was definitely the smartest. She definitely built the most tools. Abel, on the other hand, he would wait for Betty to get the food, and then he would steal it from her.
Ironic.
So he had the social intelligence, I guess.
He's unable.
He's unable, but he's kind of an asshole as well, right? So
this would be an
Betty.
incredible sitcom. Betty and Abel, like.
It would be. They're like my favorite science couple, Betty and Abel. You know,
All right.
getting in
I'm
their
going to try
mishaps.
something. Okay. They're crows. Would it be a sit-caw? Oh, fuck you.
I wonder who's their talent agent. It's a cold crowd, I think.
No, you guys just suck. A great crowd.
They can also do other kinds of tool use. So here's a crow using stones to raise the level of water in a tube in order to get that floating treat that's on top. So they're really able to be like pretty adaptive about this. They also showed that crows could tell between like a short stubby tube and a tall skinny tube, like which one was the one that they should invest the most time putting rocks into to lift the water level. So they could tell like what volume is, which is also pretty cool.
I just keep imagining Betty being like, what the fuck again? Like, I just want the food.
I mean, yeah, it's old hat for her at this point. And one of my favorite examples of this is an example that was filmed in Japan. And this is of crows using humans to really advance their tool use. So what they do here is they perch over a crossing and they drop nuts, which they can't crack themselves, onto the crossing, and then they wait for us, dumb humans, to drive over the nut in there. Look at him, he's like, I'm ready. They wait for us to drive over the nut in our buses and cars and crack it open. Then they fly down and they wait for the crossing, like good pedestrians. They
Definitely
wait
not
for the
New York
walk
City.
sign. And then they go collect their nuts so that they can have a snack.
I'm squawking here.
So pleased with himself. So good. They can also plan for the future. So if you give them a sequence of events to do to get their food, then they can do that. So if they have a short stick that they can use to pull 3 stones out that they can put into a thing that flaps down so they can get a long stick to get the food over here in number 8, then they can also do that. So this is just like a little snippet of that. This is the 3rd stone coming now. And then grabbing the long stick, which then he can use.
This one would be a great game show to watch.
Yeah. Do you guys know like the NASA astronaut who built the squirrel maze in his backyard?
Oh, yes.
Couple YouTubers out there, okay?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I want this with crows. Yeah.
There are some crow cams out there if you want to Google later. They're pretty cool to watch.
But they are from the study in the 70s.
And there's also real-life Betty and Abels out there still living today, because I'm sad to tell you that Betty and Abel are no longer with us. I know. And these are actually Hawaiian crows. These are a pretty rare breed of crows that were only studied kind of recently doing this. And they exhibit similar behavior in the wild, where they'll use a stick to retrieve like grubs and then steal them from each other. So of course it's Brain Awareness Week, so we have to talk about the brain. And these animals have like way bigger brains than my sworn enemy, the domestic pigeon, just because they like try to nest on my windowsill. And so they have more brain, they have bigger brains. In addition, for a long time, we thought that birds didn't really have the kind of brain architecture, like the shapes of the brains and the way that their neurons connected with each other, was not like that of humans. So humans have something called cortex, which a lot of you probably heard about. It's like where all the processing happens. It's where a lot of those higher level areas that Thiago showed us on his lovely human brain actually take part. And there isn't such a thing in the bird brain. They don't have cortex. They have this area shown in the pigeon called pallium, this like green area in the pigeon. And so for a really long time, people thought that birds just didn't have like the connections between the neurons that were necessary. And in 2020, when I guess I was just like, I don't know, just sitting around feeling really depressed, these people published a whole paper showing that the architecture of the bird brain, these like neuron connections shown in blue lines and white lines here, are actually really similar in the bird pallium to the mammalian brain. There's a rat brain there on the left. And so they started to show that maybe it isn't cortex that's so special after all. And that led to a very strange study, which was published around the same time, being tied in with this knowledge. And this is about like what birds know. So they tested some members of the corvid family by recording from neurons in their equivalent of the prefrontal cortex, that like most high-level area of the brain that really shuts down when you drink too much. And they recorded from these neurons to see if They would reflect if a bird had to hit a target to get a reward based on a memory. Did the neurons reflect where the actual reward was or where the bird thought it was? And it turned out it tracked really well with where the bird thought it was. Even if the bird got it wrong, the neurons were reflecting where the bird thought that it was and where the bird went. I think it's a little bit of a stretch to say that these neurons are coding like the beliefs. There's a lot of talk about consciousness here, but nonetheless, there's some really interesting findings coming out here. And so I just want to leave you with one thought, which is that crows also love to drink. Thank you.
Give it up. So we have one more fact to go, and it is our own resident lobe lover, Dr. Noah Giberson.
One February night in 1957, a marine biologist aboard a research vessel turned on a bright light submerged in the otherwise inky black oceanic depth. The light got the attention of a group of juvenile blanket octopuses who repeatedly visited to investigate. He did what any good scientist would do. He investigated them in return. He scooped up one of the animals with his bare hand and was immediately beset by severe pain.
Such a good scientist.
So he did what any good scientist would do. He yeeted the little octopus back into the sea. He says, I experienced sudden and severe pain and involuntarily threw the octopod back into the water. To discern the cause of his pain, he did what any good scientist would do. He purposefully placed 10 to 12 more octopuses on the tender area of his palm and observed that, quote, severe pain occurred each time, and that the pain and the resulting swelling and inflammation lasted for several days. These days, it is widely known that cephalopods like octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish are highly intelligent, but it wasn't always. In fact, Aristotle, again, the villain of this episode, wrote in his... Yeah. He wrote in his History of Animals, the octopus is a stupid creature, for it will approach a man's hand if it be lowered in water. I ask, who's stupid now? So the account of this masochist masquerading as a marine biologist was published in the journal Science, one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the entire world, proving once and for all that science used to be way easier. But what he found was actually quite interesting. He watched really carefully when he put the animals on his hand, and he realized that they weren't biting him. Closer inspection revealed that they were in fact holding on to the detached tentacles of the Portuguese man-o-war, and that they basically appeared to be wielding them as weapons. If you're not familiar with the Portuguese man-o-war, this is pretty impressive, because the Portuguese man-o-war is essentially a purple balloon of carbon monoxide and a bundle of stinging tentacles that can reach 165 feet in length. Their venom paralyzes small fish and other prey, and in humans causes extreme pain and these long, thin red welts where the tentacles touch the skin. Importantly, detached tentacles and those of dead man-o-war that are actually washed up on beaches can sting just as painfully as live ones, and that their stings can remain potent for up to like several days later. So evidently these octopuses have figured this out, and they deliberately rip them off of these extremely dangerous animals to use as offensive or defensive weapons, carefully and incredibly dexterously, as you can see in this diagram here, where they basically arranged them very carefully along their suckers to minimize the amount of surface area. But this account, what's really interesting about this is that this account is one of the earliest ever reports of cephalopod tool use, and a behavior that was once thought to be restricted to primates and later to birds as well. And another example of tool use in octopus is the veined octopus in the Western Pacific, which has been observed collecting coconut shells, and in what some cognitive scientists also consider to be evidence of planning for the future, carrying them around all day, basically wearing the two halves of them like a suit of armor. And perhaps my favorite example of octopus tool use in the literature about this is the account of a so-called seven-armed octopus called Halophron atlanticus. It's a seven-armed octopus.
So it's a heptapod.
So the thing about this is that they do have an eighth arm. It's just really, really small, and it's curled up inside their body, and they have thick, all their other arms are really thick, so you can't see it. So it's named the seven-armed octopus, but it's really a seven and a 10th arm. And so basically, it was holding on to this jellyfish mouth to mouth, basically. And it wasn't eating the jellyfish, and it was expending energy trying to keep its position in the water column to remain in place. So it wasn't like it was just hitching a ride where it could like passively float along with this jellyfish. And so when the octopus noticed the divers, I think you can even see here, it turns around and like orients the stingers of the jellyfish, like tentacles, toward the diver, as if being like, you know, like, whoa, 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 stay back. But it remains a mystery, like precisely how intelligent they are. And how even to like measure like cephalopod intelligence. And we still also don't know like basically how did they develop intelligence in the first place? Because primates, dogs, dolphins, and even birds are all working from like a much more similar neural toolbox to various degrees, building on and adapting these like homologous brain structures to suit their needs. But cephalopods appear to represent this separate second evolution of this capacity, which provides neuroscientists an opportunity to learn from a totally different solution to the evolutionary problem of consciousness. And in reading about cephalopod intelligence, I saw so many questions about their intelligence, like relative to humans, with responses from random people on like Quora, confidently stating things like, they are as smart as a 5-year-old, or this is my favorite one. What is the IQ of the average octopus? Which somebody helpfully answered with, the average octopus would have an IQ of 100. That's how IQ scales work. 100 is the mean of the population. As if this person weren't asking about how an octopus
they're not wrong.
Yeah. I'm sorry, this is it. And I also just want to point out that this is the person who responded to this. Look, I don't know if you can see this, but it's a classic reply guy. He's an innovation professional. No further details. He posted this on Christmas Day. So look, these probably aren't the most. These probably aren't the most fruitful comparisons. But it strikes me as remarkable that despite the fact that our last common ancestor with cephalopods was a bottom-feeding flatworm about 750 million, excuse me, I'll take that again, 750 million years ago. That was seamless. They're able to use tools. They measurably benefit from like environmental enrichment. They are even thought to engage in play, defined in some papers about this as activity having no immediate benefits and structurally including repetitive or exaggerated actions that may be out of sequence or disordered, which,
So
look,
a PhD.
Exactly. It frankly describes quite a lot about my own behavior, both as a child and as an adult. And to sum up, I think we're not so different after all. But let me illustrate this with a story from my childhood. I was a very weird little kid. Just end of story. No. When I was little, I lived on a barrier island off the coast of Texas. There was literally nothing to do except to go to the beach and like go out and play, which for most kids would have been great. But instead of learning to boogie board or building sandcastles, whatever, I would toil endlessly on the oil-slicked beaches of San Luis Pass, Texas, meticulously drafting the vile concoction that I called bad guy milk. It may surprise you to learn that bad guy milk was not the latest trend in villain-based dairy alternatives. Bad guy milk was a bucket full of mud, seawater, kelp, and other various bits of Gulf Coast detritus that I would all mix together with a piece of driftwood. And to the best of my recollection, the goal here was to make something so gross that if the bad guys, unspecified, drank it, they would die. I did this for years. And not once do I remember articulating exactly how I expected to get the bad guys to drink the bad guy milk. But then I've always been more of a research and development.
You just label it bad guy
right.
milk,
Of
and
course.
they'd be like, oh, that's for me.
Exactly. I think I've always been a little bit more of a research and development guy, and that's more of a marketing problem. But the thing is, I know that it would have worked because the final ingredient was something that I thought then was just a weird purple balloon. But now I know to have been Portuguese man-o-war. They were not hard to find washed up on the beach where I came from. This was a frequent sight, and I did not know how dangerous it was. And as an oblivious child, I would pick them up and drop them in the bucket, none the wiser, with no consequences to me whatsoever, which certainly didn't help. So let me put it this way. Like the juvenile blanket octopuses that stung that marine biologist, I was a handful. Thank you very much.
Hey! So all we have left to do is to go through the answers to your quiz Our hosts and guests are going to give their answers as we walk through. If they don't know it, you can shout it out, but we're going to keep it moving because trivia, folks, is not for the faint of heart. So, question number 1. In what Andy Weir novel does he feature astrophage, an alien life form whose resting core temperature is 96.4 Celsius?
Hail Mary.
That's right. Hail Mary Project. Very nice.
Very good.
96.4. Very hot. That's part of the book. You should read it.
Okay.
Yeah. Question number 2. Horses do this 2 hours a day. Red foxes 10. Brown bats 20. Some very funny answers. What do we think it was?
Sleep?
Sleep.
Yeah, it is sleep.
We did discuss whether it was poop, but
Yeah.
then we were like, no.
That was a very engaging conversation. Everyone's second choice was a great thought.
Red foxes can't possibly poop 10 hours a day, we said.
They have so much to do. But yeah, that's the average range in sleep. Standing ungulates, not so much. Bats, yeah, why not? Question number 3. This is one of those questions you write in a hurry and you pay for it later. Once referring to a lack of power cables, what phrase now is used to describe weekends without email? This is when you're fishing for a very particular answer.
Off the grid?
We were looking for off the grid here.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We cycled between off the grid, unplugged, cut the cord. What
Yep.
was the other?
I never had a weekend without an email.
Yeah.
Postdocs, folks. But yeah, so I was going for off the grid for a reason you'll see in a minute. All the other answers, I think, kind of good answers, but this was the correct answer. Number 4, what app features several default voice options like Rivka, who is a mother from Brooklyn, and Thrax, as well as celebrities Ed Helms and Shaq?
Waze?
Yeah, these are voice options in the navigation app Waze.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, that's Waze. Waze has a lot of cool voice options. Over 200, I think, celebrities have put their voices in.
They haven't asked me yet, but you know.
Right after this episode, I think the call's
They
coming.
couldn't afford you.
They have a generic Brit anyway.
So the very pleasing species name, Aquaria victoria, is a 3 to 12 centimeter species in what family of animals?
I think this is jellyfish, right?
Yes, that is correct. These are true jellyfish. And importantly, scientists in the room are a titter. And we'll talk about why in just a second.
Wait,
That's it.
why?
Just a little hint, and we'll walk it back. Number 6, musky, putrid, pungent. I've been described as all of these. Camphoraceous, ethereal, floral, and minty are
This is the New York Times, by the way.
5 stars. They are all the 7 main categories of what?
I was going to say it just describes me through the day.
Are these like perfume things? Like,
So
is
smells.
it like the types of taste for smell?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
So these are one of 2 kind of canonical views on smell. There's another paper that found 10 distinct smells, but that was more words and I was in a hurry. So I went with the 7 smell paper. There's a ton of overlap.
Taste got sweet, umami. Oh no, I forgot the other ones.
Yeah.
Sour,
Et
bitter.
cetera.
Nobody would go to umami second unless they'd forgotten the other ones. They're much better. Whatever, move
Yeah,
on.
It's a bitter truth.
I insist to live this down immediately.
I was just going to say that I think I've reached minty, in case anyone was wondering.
All right. Question 7. In the Marvel comics, who did Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch call Dad?
Magneto, but I doubt that they were calling like the villain name. Probably Dad.
It's, this is true. It's hard to imagine calling him Dad, but Magneto is their father in most of the Marvel universe, and I know. We can talk later. But yes, Magneto is their putative father. All right, and the last question on this quiz. What founder of a modern religion published a work titled The Learning Book? L. Ron Hubbard.
Is that the Scientology guy?
We did guess L. Ron Hubbard, and it was just a wild guess. So if that's right, that's crazy.
There you go. Yeah, that is correct. With that, we have your final scores, but also a quick reveal because all of those questions had to do with Nobel Prize awarded in neuroscience.
Wow.
Actually, the last 8.
Did you ask them for to guess the theme?
I did not.
Oh wow, because
Yeah.
that's really good.
Yeah, it's a deep cut. It's a real deep cut. But we always say it's loosely inspired, so true to the name. Running through it super fast. Temperature, it was hot. Circadian rhythms, they were asleep. Grid cells, off the grid. Vesicular trafficking, Waze. GFP was found in the jellyfish, and now things glow in the dark. Olfaction is smell. Magneto is a magnet. And
You're trying to tell me somebody won the Nobel Prize for L. Ron Hubbard.
no, well, the Learning Book.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, learning.
Learning.
Yeah, okay.
Which I think he actually co-wrote with Richard Axel. So.
Oh, wow, yeah.
No. Don't believe that.
Please make a TikTok out of
Rob's
this.
not going on
Rob
the
told me that
podcast.
Eric Kandel is a Scientologist.
Anyway, we have 3 teams who did very well, finishing in 3rd place. Pinky in the Brain.
Woo!
There is a
Good name.
oh, there are actually a lot of teams. Sorry, there is a 3-way tie for 2nd. Number 1 fan, Team Frankenfurt. Oh, Frankfurt. Is there an N there? It's okay. And then Men from the 70s. Nice work.
Hey.
And your winning teams,
Good name.
tied for 1st, Neuron Fire, Tom and MJ, and Big PhD Energy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Way to go.
So thank you all. Congratulations to our winners. Talk to us after the show, which will be outside. So if you like the show, we are at Fax Machine Pod. You should go look it up if you've not already. We are on all those platforms. Our guests are awesome. Thiago Arzua at Thiago Arzua. Paula Croxson at Paula Croxson. Noah Giverson. You know, he's Noah.
That's Noah
At
Paula
Arts and
Croxson.
Sciences, I'm at whatever.
Sweater Vest SCI.
Look us up. We'll be there at _M Costa. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Caveat. We'll see you next time.
Right.